Thank you, Manu. And I'd like to acknowledge first that this is a product of a group effort of the Model Evaluation Working Group of the RRAP Modelling and Decision Support Ops team. So we've heard a lot about models already in this session. They're being developed to inform both operational decisions when we're out there and deciding where to go to, release some of our interventions, and longer term strategic decisions about what interventions we can make to support the Great Barrier Reef and its resilience. But we're really working in a fairly uncharted space. We're talking about interventions that we haven't tried before, that we're just developing now. And we're talking about fairly long timeframes. So within the RRAP modelling and decision support space, we're developing a range of different models and decision support tools associated with those models that are designed to operate on different scales and in different contexts, but collectively to give us a better understanding of the potential implications of the actions that we can take now to support the resilience of the reef. But how can we know whether our models are really fit for purpose, whether they're going to be helpful in making the right decisions in the years to come and right now? And I'd like to propose that if a model's fit for purpose, it needs to be sufficiently accurate, it needs to be sufficiently informative for the decisions that are being made or the other uses to which it's been put. It needs to be sufficiently transparent. It needs to be trusted by the people who will be making the decisions and by the people who will be most affected by those decisions. And to some degree, that's an outcome of it being accurate, informative and transparent, but it also depends on the appropriate relationships and conversations having happened. And finally, to be fit for purpose, the model needs to meet the operational requirements of the context in which it's being used. So I'm just going to talk a bit more about each of these considerations. So what does it mean for it to be accurate? Well, again, when we're working in an unknown space, projecting into environmental circumstances, which are going to be quite different from what we've had in the past, we need to know that the models capture what we do know about the reef as a system, and it isn't enough to simply fit the past observations, both because past observations are fairly sparse when we're talking about a system as big and hard to measure as the Great Barrier Reef, with so many different factors that we're interested in preserving, and because things are changing and the environmental conditions of the past are not likely to be those of the future. And so when we're dealing with using simulation models to project out into change conditions, there's a framework that we'll be adopting for evaluating the accuracy of models, which is called the 4-level or the concept, state, process, system framework. And in this framework, the first level is conceptual evaluation. So that means a few things. It means, does the model pass that ARF test? Does it behave in ways that correspond with what you know about the system? Does it embody what you understand about how it works? And does the code actually do what it says on the box? The second level is state evaluation, which is are you matching past observations of the state of the system, such as coral cover time series. The third level is going a bit beyond that into process evaluation, which is looking more at rates of change, and is your model correctly predicting, for example, how quickly a reef recovers after a bleaching event. And the fourth level, which can really help, especially if your observations are relatively sparse, can help you to believe or check whether the models are able to predict the right things for the right reasons, is the system level evaluation, where you're looking at system properties that emerge, that are not built into the model, but may emerge from the complex dynamics of the system. And they may be things like the distribution of different types of communities from inshore to offshore, or from north to south, or the ratio between juvenile and adult corals at a given time. So we've done some brainstorming within the group about the different sorts of metrics that we might use under each of those four levels. And I've just put one example for each metric there, again, to give you a better idea of how the models that are being developed within RRAP might be evaluated before we use them to make decisions. And we've also looked at what data sources are available to us to do these evaluations. So that includes things like the long-term monitoring program and marine monitoring program, mantitos and other observations, photo transects, eco-RRAPs, in situ observations of things like coral responses and community, and as well as hydrodynamic observations. Robert's larval tracer experiments, which you talked about before lunch. Some of the experiments looking at responses that have been happening in CSIM, as well as potentially in future we may be drawing in some of the DNA monitoring observations. Second, so on that accuracy, we can set targets for exactly, what metrics, what R squared needs to be for it to be useful enough, how much bias we can have between the model and the observations, and that sort of thing. But then we need to go on to the second part of fitness for purpose, which is that the model is sufficiently informative. And that means it's providing the sort of information on the right sort of scales for the decisions that you're going to be making. And because I've got a limited time, I won't go more into that now. The third component is that the model is sufficiently transparent. That covers a range of things, only a few of which I've put here, but that's about can the modelers explain to the people that need to understand it how the model works? Has its behaviour been tested so that we understand how well it works and what unusual outcomes it might produce? Has it been thoroughly documented? Has the code been made available? Have we documented how strong the evidence base is behind the assumptions that we build into the model? Have we documented what those assumptions are and where they might not work? Have we been clear about how much uncertainty there is in the predictions and so forth? And within RRAP modelling and decision support, we're taking a number of steps to make sure all our input and output data and our model code and so forth are documented and available, and the workflows that we use will be documented so it doesn't just rely on the particular people who built the models being available to do every run. Fourth, as I said at the start, the model needs to be trusted, and to some extent making sure it's well documented, that it's peer reviewed and so forth will build that trust. We also need to be having conversations, having discussions about the modelling with the people who will be using it and be affected by it, presenting in forums like this. We need to make sure that it's not a one-way thing, that we understand the needs of those stakeholders and understand what it will take to earn their trust. And finally, the models need to meet the operational requirements of the context in which they'll be used. Now, I have a AI-generated image here. Here we have a clock. It's probably quite accurate. We can understand if we spend a bit of time reading up on clockwork, how it works. So it's probably reasonably transparent. It probably gives us information we need. For instance, it'll give me the information that I have less than 2 minutes left to talk. And so Manu will know when he has to kick me off the stage. But it doesn't meet that operational aspect of fitness for purpose. It's a bit clunky. It's not something you're really going to wear on your wrist, and it's going to be quite awkward. It's not fit for the purpose of being a wristwatch. So for our models, we need to assess operational requirements, like can it run fast enough to inform a decision when a decision point comes up. Some of the models we're using take weeks to run. But that's okay for some sorts of decisions and not others. Is it robust and reliable to run when we need to run it? Or might we expect to have to do a lot of, stops and starts, to actually get it working each time we need to run it? And what does it take to run a new model for a new scenario? Is there a lot of development work and data sourcing each time, or is a lot of the process relatively automated? Do we need the particular person who developed it to press the button and run it? Or is that a workflow that can be handed over to someone else if they're on holiday or if they've moved on to another project? And they're the sort of things that are part of the design considerations for these models and that we need to get right. So just the summary again, if I haven't run over time already. We're aiming with these decision support models to have models that are sufficiently accurate, sufficiently informative, sufficiently transparent, that they can be trusted, and that are operationally suitable for the range of decisions that they'll be used to inform. And yeah, just finally, a list of names of some of the people that have contributed to these discussions.
Any questions for Barbara? And may I remind you that we need to use the microphones for those online. Any questions online?
Thank you, Barbara, for a very interesting talk. I'm just wondering, do you have any examples that you evaluated using this principle?
We haven't actually applied this to our models yet, but we've set up the framework that we will be using. So no, I can talk in more detail. We've been thinking about this evaluation as we continue to develop the models. So, for instance, we know currently that some of our models aren't yet meeting the operational requirements. There's too much of a scramble, and they're a bit slow if we're given a decision that we need to inform. And so, with this in mind, we're working on making those workflows smoother and making the models more robust and so forth. But I don't have a full work through for any of our models that I can show you at this point. Although, if you're interested in the accuracy part of it, I did publish a paper a few years ago applying that 4-level framework to the reefs models, particularly the water quality side of it. So I'm happy to share that with you.
Thank you, Barbara.